Welcome to Americana Archives. Today's headline is Making a Brain for a Gallant Fire Horse. The subheadline is Though trained to be as wise as he is brave, he must die unhonored or drag a truck after his day of glory is ended. It says, among the most interesting institutions in this city are the fire department's big hospital and training stables in West 99th Street. Here, the world famous New York Fire Horse passes his examination and is accepted and gets his first lessons in the art of firefighting. Here he is brought, when scorched or bruised or cut or sprained, to be doctored and nursed back to strength and usefulness. And from here, he is borne away dead, or is condemned and sold to the highest bidder to end his days in front of a truck or a coal cart, the reward of a big city for gallantry displayed in action. Anywhere from 70 to 80 horses a year are trained to take the places of those killed or crippled in service, or to join newly organized companies scattered throughout the outlying districts of our continually growing town. Yearly, more than 100 horses are brought to the hospital to be sewed up and bandaged and operated on by the official veterinarian and his assistants. And yearly, some 60 horses are stricken from the training stable's rolls, either as died in the discharge of duty or condemned because of unfitness. Of all the firemen in the department, probably none knows as much and can talk so interestingly about the fire horses of New York as Chief Joseph Shea, the official veterinarian in charge of the hospital and training stables, and the man who examines and passes upon and trains every beast bought by the city for fire purposes. You may be surprised, but all we pay for fire horses is $250 each, the chief said in answer to a question. We contract with the lowest bidder, and throughout the year, he is obliged to supply us with horses whenever called upon. I often wondered at the absurd rate asked for a horse that is physically and mentally perfect and without blemish. But we never had trouble getting all the horses we wanted at this low figure, and our specifications are pretty stiff at that. Most of our horses come from the upper part of New York State, from the big farms around Rochester. Some come to us from the west. But the New York State horse is about as fine a beast as we can find for our purposes, and that's where most of the animals in the department hail from. The contractor notifies us that he has one or two or a dozen horses which he thinks will fill our purpose, and he is ordered to send them on trial. Height, weight, etc. being satisfactory, the first step is to examine the candidate for soundness. I always look first at the eyes. An animal with what we call pig's eyes is apt to be nearsighted. His eyes are sunk deep in his head. He's the sort of horse that will stumble and fall all over himself, and that ought to wear spectacles. A horse set with eyes too far out of his head is likewise apt to suffer in sight. Look at the eyes of any fire horse and see what is meant by properly set eyes. And if you see a brute wide between the eyes, put him down as knowing next most to yourself. A horse with his eyes set close together doesn't seem to have enough room for much brain. And sure as fate, you couldn't teach him anything if you pumped at him for a month of Sundays. 30 days trial. But with the test of the eyes, even if an animal is satisfactory in all other respects, the examination has only begun. 30 days trial we require before deciding whether we are going to accept or reject a beast. A horse's disposition, his aptness to learn, his grit and his nerve, his common sense, and his habits must all be taken into consideration. The engine we use for breaking the horses is one of the free abreast kind, now commonly used throughout the department. By hitching a new horse between two veterans, we not only steady him and get the aid of the older animals, but we have the candidate where the dead weight of the 4.5 tons pulls heaviest, and where he will have to show his mettle. As the engine starts, the frightened animal springs forward to get away from the dreadful thing behind, but the other horses throw the full weight of the engine right on him and steady him. Up and down the block, the free horses are driven, 2, even 3 hours at a time. until gradually the stranger gets exhausted and finds himself and doesn't try to pull the entire load by himself. When a horse is broken to pulling the engine, he is tested for a number of qualifications. For instance, an engine may be caught in a snowbank, and everything depend upon the willingness of the horses to try to pull it out. A horse that balks, for instance, is out of the question. Therefore, as the team drives along, the engine driver jams his brake down hard, almost locking the wheels. A balky horse will object at once to the added load. The kind of a beast we want will dig his toes into the asphalt and make fire fly before he gives up. A further test required is whether a new horse can turn and maneuver readily, and whether he may be depended upon to back up an engine in case of emergency, or when storing the apparatus in the engine house. To test these qualities, the engine is driven again and again over a short course, describing the figure 8, and this complete, the engine is backed in a straight line for 50 feet and is backed up grade and in curves. At this stage of the test, we usually examine a horse's wind. Fatigued more or less by the strenuous exertion, a horse with defective wind will betray the weakness by his breathing. A sharp, wheezy inhalation shows the animal is unsound in wind. A horse that stands the test up to this point stands a good chance of being admitted into the coveted ranks. But a few more tests remain. All the trouble we have had with breaking in the horse to the engine is repeated in breaking him to the swinging harness. Only by time and unlimited patience can a horse be broken to this. He is led under the harness, and very gently this is lowered onto him, and every buckle snapped exactly if he were to dig out the next instant for a 40-block run. Next time, the harness comes down a little heavier, and still a little heavier, until finally the animal doesn't mind a tangle of leather straps and buckles as they flounder full force from above. By this time, if a horse is ugly or vicious, we are pretty sure to know it, and the animal is rejected without further trial. We have no use for ill-natured brutes in our engine houses. In the first place, they never learn to like their work, and in the second, men have enough to look out for themselves in the hurry and bustle of a fire call, and you can't expect them to dodge a bitter or a kicking horse, or to watch a horse that is apt to create mischief with his mates. Now and then, you see a fire horse that is muzzled as he stands at the hydrant while his engine is thumping away. But the muzzle is not because of viciousness. The trouble is that some horses develop a knack of trying to chew up their harness. This is the reason for the muzzle. Check back soon for part 2 of this incredible story. This story came from the great state of New York, being reported in the New York Times on March 6, 1904. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.